Hey everyone, Jason here, digital marketing consultant, and in this side hustle guide, you're going to get a complete 5-part business plan for getting up and running with your new consulting practice. So timestamps below, along with some other helpful videos to attracting new clients. So the very first step to getting your consulting practice off the ground, of course, is figuring out what the heck your service should be. And I need to add a little disclaimer here. Unlike some other tutorials or posts you may have come across, I do not believe consulting is a good business model if you don't already have a skill or passion that you want to turn into a skill. So if you're still trying to figure out what your passion is or what your core skills are that you actually want to turn into a business, then consulting is definitely not the place to figure that out. So with that out of the way, let's try and figure out how the heck to actually choose what our service should be. And we're going to use this simple sentence as a guide for figuring out what your service should be. I help ideal client take action or achieve results so they can enjoy a benefit. Now, what could the results and benefits be? Well, this could be a long laundry list, right? This could be a marketer helping people get more customers. This could be a relationship coach helping people have a more fulfilling relationship, or it could be a dog trainer saying the end result is you have a super obedient dog who can do tricks at parties, right? So whatever that might be, we want to think in terms of what our ideal customer ultimately wants, not necessarily the long laundry list of things that we're going to be doing. So a great way to illustrate this is the classic marketing example of a hole and a drill, right? So when someone wants to mount a TV, hang some family photos, or put up a bookshelf, what are they going to do? They're going to go to the hardware store and they're going to buy a drill so that they can drill a hole in the wall so that they can mount their TV or hang whatever they care about. Now in this equation, as consultants, we are the drill. But in the context and eyes of our ideal customers or our future clients, they don't really care about the drill. So when we go around talking about all the cool things we can do, customers and clients don't care. They care about the hole in the wall that allows them to do what they really want, which is mount the TV on the wall or have the family photos or bookshelf. And so, yeah, that's a really silly example, but it helps us as consultants design and define our services in the context of what matters to our ideal client, as opposed to all of the stuff that we have to do. So in this particular silly example, let's say we're the drill consultant for some reason. Our sentence would read, I help people drill holes in walls so that they can hang bookshelves. And as you go through this simple exercise filling out this sentence, it's okay if you come up with multiple of them. You'll be able to figure out your concrete service in part number 3 when we get to your packages. So now that we know what we're going to be offering and we have a rough idea of why other people would care what our service is in the first place, now let's go and finish off filling out the sentence by identifying who exactly our ideal client is. Now I'll link up in the cards in the description to a video that goes a much deeper dive in how to come up with your ideal customer profile using Facebook Audience Insights, going through Google Analytics. But here we are just going to 80-20 or more like 90-10 the process and just use the 5 words exercise to figure out who we want to target. And to do this, all we need to do is come up with 5 words that describe who our ideal client is. So as an example, if we were a YouTube growth consultant, our 5 words might look like this: entrepreneur, video content creator, and they have their own products and services to sell, and they just want to be a larger influencer. Their big problem is trying to figure out how to grow their channel faster. And so in our example sentence here, instead of just saying people for the drill, we would say entrepreneur, video content creator. Obviously, you'd fill it in with whatever label you want to give your ideal customer. What's important here is you just give a broad label for your ideal client. You don't have to be super specific here. Again, I'll link up in the cards in the description to a video that takes a much deeper dive on coming up with all the rest of your psychographics and analytical details of who you're targeting. For your business plan here, 5 words is enough to know who you're targeting. So hopefully at this point, you know the action that you're taking, you know who you're targeting, and you know why they actually care about the service that you're providing. So at this point, it's time to figure out in part number 3, how the heck to charge for your services. What what should you charge? How should you package them? And so there are two basic formulas or techniques you can use to figure out these two questions. So the very first one is figuring out what on earth your packages should be. Now, when it comes to pricing, I highly recommend going the package route. Do not start off on an hourly rate. There's a time and place for that, and we'll get to that at the end of this part. And so the best way to figure out what your packages of services should look like for the result that you figured out is actually heading over to Fiverr. Now, am I saying that you have to only get paid $5 or $10? Of course not. But what's really great about Fiverr is you can go there and you can look at Fiverr gigs and what's included and how they word their particular services to get a good understanding of what you could include in your own service offering as a package. Now, what's very important here, as a new consultant, you only want 3 packages. Yes, you're going to be saying no to a lot of things, but as you see, we'll see in part 5, the only way you can scale is if you productize your service. You have to create a very well-oiled system where a client comes in and you give them the result that they're looking for. And you can't do that if you're creating some sort of custom package or solution for every single client that comes in the door. Yes, you're going to be saying no to a lot of business, and that's okay. Every consultant has to get over that. But we're going to choose 3 packages here, and remember to use the sentence you came up in part 1 as a guide for the results, ultimate results or benefits that your package will deliver. When you're creating your package, you're just figuring out what are all the things that you need to include in that package in order for your client to come out on the other end with the results and benefits that they ultimately want. Now, this next step to creating your packages is your pricing structure, right? Figuring out what the heck your pricing should be. Now, this is a very simple formula, and this is a great way to essentially just have a confident price point to start with, and you can always change it later. You can always go up, you can always go down. Something that I dealt with when I first started as a consultant was going up and down on price all the time, trying to figure out where the right balance of services rendered and ultimate results delivered and how much it was actually worth to the client. So here is a very, very basic formula. I highly recommend just copying this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take your hourly rate times estimated work hours times 1.3, and that equals your package price. So for your hourly rate, if your potential client was going, or if you were going to be hired at an actual company to do the job that you're going to do for your ideal client, how much would you be paid per hour? So you can go look on whatever job boards or sites there are in your area, and you can see what the going rate is. You'll take that hourly rate, you'll take the estimated time, and that is how long do you think, how many hours do you think it's going to take you to give the result that your client is looking for? So you multiply that together, that is your cost. And then you're going to multiply it by 1.3, and that gives you your profit. So here's an example of how I did this when I first started as a Google Ads consultant, or back when it was called Google AdWords. So the going rate in my area for a PPC professional was about $25 an hour. If I worked at an agency, it would take me about 20 hours to set up the ads account, and times 1.3 would give me $650. And so that's what I charged for a new account setup. I got a 30% margin, and it also gave me a little buffer in case it took longer than expected, and I wasn't overcharging or asking for some sort of premium before I had a portfolio of my own to prove that I'm actually worth that premium. So yes, you can charge higher prices, but you're definitely not going to start there. I'm not saying though you have to do it for pennies on the dollar. You just need a reasonable rate to start with. And one other quick note here, asterisk, before we move on to acquiring your clients, is to also keep in mind the types of clients that you're going for. Something that I had to learn the hard way is, even though I'm doing the same account setup, the value for an account setup to a restaurant versus, say, a dentist or plastic surgeon, well, that's very, very different value to the end client, even though the work itself is the same. The restaurant could not afford to pay much more than $650, whereas the service professionals like the dentists, orthodontists, or even the car dealerships, they could afford to pay more because their customers were worth more. And so the result that I was getting for them was worth more to them than it was to the restaurant owner. So that's also something you might want to keep in mind as you go through creating your pricing. You might figure out that, oh, I actually need to target a different type of customer because they're going to actually be able to pay more or afford your service. So now let's go on to part number 4 of your digital consulting business plan here, and that is going to be acquiring customers. Now this is going to be the hardest part. Everything we've done so far, you could probably take care of in a few days or on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. This is where the rubber really meets the road, and you're going to have to roll up your sleeves. So there are 3 different ways to do it, and each way has some pros and some big cons. So we're going to start with the free way, and then we're going to go with the really long way, and then we're going to go with the fast way that takes the most amount of money. So the first way you can do it is, of course, going to community groups. So once you've identified who your ideal customers are, you go into Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, and even some places on Reddit, and you just start being helpful, answering questions. Now, this only works if you never promote yourself openly. That's very important here. So when it comes to attracting clients, you can't go into any sort of community group and promote your services. You just can't do that. You're going to be kicked out immediately, and you're just gonna look like someone who's desperate for business, right? And so what you want to do in those situations is answer questions, be helpful to everyone in there, and you will begin to naturally look like an authority, and people will begin to naturally reach out to you. And then we'll get to what to do once they do reach out when we talk about your lead generation funnel here. So that's route number 1. Route number 2 is creating a YouTube channel and creating some content that would be valuable to your ideal customer. Now, you don't have to go posting hundreds of videos here. You probably only need to post anywhere from 3 to 10 videos max in order for this strategy to work. I'll link up in the cards and the description to a video that actually walks through how to use YouTube to attract clients without creating hundreds of videos. And then your final option is going to be using something like Google Ads, where you're creating very targeted ads specifically designed to talk directly to your ideal client and pretty much no one else. Now, whichever one of these you choose, you're going to have some pros and cons. Obviously, the paid ads route is the fastest, but of course it requires capital. The first one we talked about is free, going into community groups, but it's going to take a tremendous amount of time. And when you're creating YouTube content, you're going to have a little combination of both, right? You're probably going to need to pick up a little bit of video equipment, but don't buy a camera, you can just use your phone, right? And then you're also going to have the time factor where you're going to have to wait for your videos to begin to rank and actually start bringing in customers. Now, irrespective of the traffic source that you choose or strategy, you're probably going to want to drive people to something called a landing page. And this is going to be where you collect their contact information in exchange for something of value, or you book a free call with them right off the bat. So depending upon your business model, or if you're even familiar with lead magnets, you'll want to create some sort of free report or a case study that would be valuable to your ideal customer in exchange for their name and email. Or if you don't have that yet, or that just seems like a completely foreign concept, I'll link up in the cards in the description to a video that goes through how to actually set that funnel up. But instead of going down that route, just offer free discovery or free consulting calls, especially if you're doing the community engagements. That's going to be a huge value proposition, and you're going to be able to immediately get in front of them to potentially close a sale. Now, if you're terrified of getting on the phone and actually talking to people, then consulting is probably not the best business to be in, because closing over the phone is the best way to actually get clients as a consultant, irrespective of what traffic sources or traffic strategies you use to attract those clients in the first place. So if you're still watching, go ahead and hit that like button, comment below if you have any questions so far. Here we are going to switch gears and start talking about how to actually make sure that your clients are happy and you can successfully productize your service. So taking a look at this diagram here, we have 3 big milestones or steps to any sort of consulting project. We're going to have intake or onboarding, we're going to have creation, which is work, and then we're going to have the output, which is offboarding. So we need to think just as much of sending clients out the door as we are bringing clients in, because as much as we like to think that everyone's gonna love our service and wanna stick with us forever, clients are eventually going to leave no matter how good of a job you do. And if you do a good enough job, they're actually supposed to leave in some situations. So let's go through this step by step. So once you finally have your client, you've hung up the phone and they've said yes, you need to send off an invoice to them and immediately give them a welcome email telling them the 3 things they need to immediately do. And this is something that you can actually create as a template. For us as a digital marketing agency, for example, we immediately ask them to watch an introduction video that actually goes through this process that we're going through right now so they know exactly what the project will look like. We're going to ask them for the account access we need, and then we ask them a couple of basic questions about their business so we can get started on the research. Obviously, your consulting engagement is going to be a little different, but if you just want to think about the 3 things you need right at the beginning so you can hit the ground running, keep that momentum going. They just said yes, and you want to begin the process as quickly as possible. So if you have this as a template, that's great to send out within an hour or 2 of you closing the sale along with the invoice. Now, the second thing you want to do is have any sort of information requests come on day number 2 or 3. And so this is where if you need access to information, you need them to fill out a form, maybe you're doing some design work and you need them to write the copy for the website, then you want to go ahead and make sure that you have a checklist for yourself where you're collecting all the information you need to do the work. Because when we get to phase number 2, you want to make sure that you can go to work without having to ask the client any more questions. So you want to be really upfront with the questions. It's also best to ask here because your client is most likely really engaged and really energized and enthusiastic. So you want to ask all those tough questions, get all that information while the client is happy and ready to engage, because by week 3 or 4, they're probably petered out and they just want to see the result or they're getting impatient, right? And so the last thing you want to do in this step is have some sort of summary call before you start diving into the actual work. Now, the length of time this might take, this might go over a day. You might send off 2 or 3 emails and then 2 or 3 days later you have a call, or it might take a week to collect all the information. What's most important is you collect all the information and then you have some sort of check-in with your client before you get started on the work. That's so important. Probably in the top 5 tips is to make sure you have everything you need, and then make sure you have either, if you don't want to get on the phone with them again, at least have an email check-in and let them know that you have everything and you're going to start work. And so they should not expect to hear from you until X number of days or X number of weeks. This is so important to managing your time as a consultant, because one of the worst things you can have happen is you collect all this information and then the client expects you to keep talking to them while you're trying to do the work. So you can't do work and talk to clients and get new clients at the same time. That's too much to juggle. So you want to make sure that you have this intake process, you collect all that information, and then you have a close. So the client knows you're not going to talk to them for a week or 2. Why? Because you're doing the work, right? And that gives you much more flexibility over your own schedule. You're not going to feel like you're on call needing to answer questions 24/7. And then this next part is going to depend upon what your actual engagement is and what your actual work is. But here you're going to have some milestones. You're going to get the work done. And if the project lasts more than a few weeks, you probably want to have some timed check-ins where every X number of days you check in with the client and you just let them know the progress. This isn't something where you're going to be answering 21 questions. You just want to let the client know that, hey, we're still thinking about you, we're still working on it, it's not like we forgot about you. And so that's really important to just keep the client's peace of mind that you're on top of the work. And finally, we have part 3, which is going to begin the offboarding process. So this is going to be where you deliver the final work and then you go straight into revisions. Now, when it comes to you as a consultant, you need to have really, really clear, crystal clear rules on the number of revisions and the amount of time a client has to get back to you with those revisions. I've talked to web developers, especially in web development, this drives them nuts, is you might have a client where you deliver it and then they say, yeah, they give you a couple of things feedback and then they take a week to review your changes. You need it to have it in clear writing that says they have X number of days to get back to you with the revision. Whether you give them a week, 2 weeks, a month, it doesn't matter. It just needs to be written down, because the last thing you want is to can go back and forth over and over again with revision this, revision that, revision this, revision that. And so the advantage advantage of using a package in the very beginning is you have a clear list of what you're doing. And so once you've delivered and they've gone through the revisions, when they want something else, that's where your hourly rate can come in. After the package, after you deliver the main result, and they're asking for more that's out of scope. And it's a natural progression to say, sure, we can do things on an hourly rate now because you had a clear package with a clear defined deliverable, and you had a clear process and timeline where you've delivered it and the revision period is over. And then of course, we have the final step, which is going to be the final delivery. All the revisions are done, and you give them any information that they need in order to be successful. Something that we've done with our Google Ads accounts is at the end of the setup or at the end of the management period, if they decide to take over the account, then we go ahead and actually give them some training and some resources so that they can be successful on their own. There's nothing good about creating some sort of engagement where the client has to keep working with you in order for them to be successful. That is a terrible way to get referrals. And we've actually gotten referrals from clients who decided not to keep working with us because we did such a good job offloading all of the work onto either them because they wanted to take it over, or to someone on their team, and we ended on a good note. So you always want to end on a good note because referrals are a great way to get more clients in the future. So that does it for your simple 5-part, well, as simple as we could be, right? Your simple 5-part business plan for getting your consulting practice off the ground. Make sure you use those timestamps below to go back through this plan, and comment below if you have any questions as you get started with your own consulting practice. So hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive business plans just like this one, and until the next, keep building the business you love.